Willie D. Live.
If there's two things in life that a man has to control, he has to learn how to control. If he is to get close to reaching his apex, and that is his emotions and his penis. Got to be able to control that. In fact, I wasn't always at the best at doing that. Got myself in a lot of jams. But once I figured it out, ooh-wee, man, off the chain. That's why it's important for boys to have male role models and have their fathers in their lives, because a father can tell a son, look, man, like your daddy told you, that was invaluable, what that information he gave you. If you didn't get that information, who knows, you could have ended up being like some of these other guys out here who, excuse my French and pardon my vernacular, but can't let a hoe be a hoe. You know? It's very difficult for them to do that. You had a very public confrontation with Kanye West at TMZ.
Yeah.
What was your role at TMZ at that time?
I was a senior producer for TMZ Sports and a TMZ television personality. I was on all three shows.
Right. So when you gave your take, I had never heard you really speak at length on anything before. You know what I'm saying? I never had really just heard you. I saw you give a quick take, but never saw. When I saw that, I was like, oh shit, this dude is about to blow up. I was like, and I know that's not what you were thinking, but it was almost like you couldn't wait to be able to speak your mind, like, with complete autonomy. Like, you couldn't wait to do that shit. Like, when you let off on that, you was hitting all cylinders. You know, you didn't miss words and you didn't waste words. Did you think about the consequences of airing somebody that big out at your job in front of the whole world? Did you think about it before you did it? Or
Nah.
you just...
The one thing that I will say about TMZ is that your perspective is your perspective.
Okay.
They're not going... There's very few things you can say on TMZ to get yourself in trouble. They would rather you have, at least when I was there, they would rather you have like an uncut, unvarnished opinion on something. You have complete freedom to cover things, to do things, and to say things. So I wasn't worried about any blowback. I certainly wasn't worried about any blowback from him because, I mean, what is he going to do to me? I was embarrassed for him. And I was embarrassed for myself because I had been a consistent defender of him for a long time on the show.
Yeah, and for context, this is the...
Slavery was a choice.
Slavery was a choice statement that Kanye made.
Right. And so I was like, hey, you know, for me, I was wondering, I really wanted to talk to him about where he was at this stage of his life and why we were now getting the brunt of all of Kanye's ire, why it was coming back at us when we had given him this gigantic platform to go out and speak and talk and say things like what was up with him. And then it was always going to come out not being disrespectful. It was always going to come out in love and in concern because I don't have any disdain for him. I wasn't mad at Kanye West. I loved Kanye West, you know. And so my thing is like, why us? Why are you dissing the ancestors? Why are you talking like this in front of them?
Why are you dissing the ancestors?
Why are you dissing the ancestors in front of them? Why are you making us sound weak? Like, why are you talking like this in front of them? I'm in this building every single day trying my best. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not climbing up on a cross. I worked at TMZ, and you work there. You're a part of it, right? But you're there, and you're doing things, and you're having fights, and you're doing all of this stuff. And I'm not trying to make it seem like it was a constant fight for my cultural soul every day at TMZ. Look, I enjoyed working there. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying all of the stuff that you do say and the fights that you do have and all of that stuff, you're doing all of that. And then Kanye West comes in and says, hey, slavery, not that big deal. Kind of black people's fault. I'm like, you don't hear yourself? You're too minted and goated to say something like that. And it's untrue. And it's not even true.
So, explain to the people who bought that narrative why that's untrue.
It's untrue for myriad reasons. Number one, one reason why it's untrue is because slavery then and slavery anytime is a system, right? There were a lot of different ways that slaves revolted against slave masters. First of all, there were outright revolts, some that you've heard of, some that you have not heard of, where slaves picked up arms and revolted against masters. But the question you have to ask yourself is, what is a revolutionary act while you're a slave, right? Is taking up a hatchet and killing a master the only thing that you can do to revolt while you're a slave? No, your ancestors revolted every single day. They revolted by getting married. They revolted when mothers walked away from plantations to other plantations to see their children at night. They revolted by slowing down the work. They revolted by becoming skilled workers. They revolted and stepped out of the idea that they were mindless beasts that had no other utility on this earth rather than to work and toil for somebody else in a lot of different ways. They revolted by learning to read when they could. There were so many ways that they refused to be pigeonholed into the identity that America had for them. And if not for their survival and their ingenuity and their bravery and their strength, we're not having this conversation. And not only that, but slaves that were then freed, like Frederick Douglass and other people, were key factors and figures in the abolition movement that eventually brought slavery to its knees. The white man would have you believe that it was his decision to start slavery and then his decision to stop it, and that you had absolutely no agency in that decision. It's just not true. It's important to be able to be well read on your history to know what your people are responsible for. And even if they hadn't done any of that, if there hadn't been a Nat Turner, if there hadn't been a Denmark Vesey, if there hadn't been a Harriet Tubman, if there hadn't been a Frederick Douglass, if there hadn't been any of those people, right? They survived. They lived. They didn't fold up.
That in itself was a revolt.
That in and of itself was a revolt. They survived. They lived. They prayed themselves into a future. They endured themselves into a future. And they did it all so your black ass could sit up here and make some fucking rap songs. How dare you?
Yeah.
And it'll always be that way.